I'm resident of Collinwood, Joel Sains, joined by my buddy Patrick McCray and my buddy Gordan Dymowski. We're here to talk episode 1010 of Dark Shadows. Patrick, you still there?
My God, am I here? Is my camera on?
It's on now. Okay.
You're kind of blending into the background, Patrick. Oh, now you're here.
It's a state of quantum flux.
Okay. So this episode is narrated by Elizabeth East. If I butcher her last name, I apologize.
Dice. I think it's pronounced Dice.
It's written by Gordan Russell. It's directed by Henry Kaplan. So, what did you guys think of Buffy Harrington in Parallel Time?
Buffy. Well, who is Buffy Harrington in Maine? Is she someone who appears in Maine Time? Is she like a Leviathan follower? Or?
She only appears, to my knowledge, she only appears in 1970 Parallel Time. But Harrington, she's somebody who works as a waitress at the Eagle, if you will, and she sort of falls for, John Yeager a bit, and plus Cyrus, she sort of flirts with Cyrus Longworth a bit too. She tells Cyrus Longworth about John Yeager, which she's ultimately going to get killed, but she does things for John Yeager. In this episode, she gets the antidote for him to help him in this very episode. So Elizabeth, the woman who narrates this episode, plays Buffy Harrington. So what did you guys think of her?
I thought she was very well cast as a character named Buffy Harrington. Mm-hmm. And I think of the various Buffy Harringtons the show might have had, she is certainly the best in episode 1010. She's fine. With Ice is because she's Dorcas Trilling, because Trilling is funny. She's the big D. She's the big D to the Trill. She is a fine functional actress. She strikes me as the sort of actress that Dan had on speed dial, kind of ready to go in case they needed another Carolyn Groves or Betsy Durkin, or was it Nancy Walker or whoever it was who played Carolyn that one day. So I get the idea that Dan had some actors really in mind to come in and replace some others, because they show up a fair amount.
He probably had his, you have your main players, but then he had like his cast of day players. Like he knew, okay, I don't have much of a role, but I've got this Buffy Harrington character. All my main actors are kind of either busy or we're filming, or we need someone to just, who I know, they're not going to pull a Craig Slocum, basically.
Well, now let's pull a Slocum. When are we pulling a Slocum?
Well, when you look like this and you talk like as if you're reading the auto cue or when you're reading the lines off camera, that's pulling a Slocum.
Would we call this the Slocum effect?
Yes, we would.
Okay, good. Jewel, what ultimately comes from the Slocum effect?
You're talking about the guy who played Harry Johnson. Oh my God. Listen,
Harry Johnson is associated with Slocum.
Listen. When you get every actor that gets cast in a role isn't necessarily going to make it big. I do think that some characters are just, how do I put this? And I'll go back to the original comparison I made. There's your top stars, there's your mid-carders, and then there's your people who are here to do a job and get the hell out. That's Craig Slocum.
So let me ask you. You said something about that character he played not being as popular as he might have been.
Yes.
Would you have liked to have seen a bigger Harry Johnson?
Harry Johnson, they lose. I think I sort of would have loved to ask one of the writers, are you scared to, because when I watch Harry Johnson, I get the sense that because he has a criminal past. That's our hint.
He is up to no good.
Yeah, I get the sense that there are no one's forgotten Willie Loomis, and you're never going to forget Willie Loomis. And I get the sense that the writers sort of realized real fast that, wait a second, we already have a character who was a criminal and a thief in Willie Loomis. Do we really want another one? And I honestly think that's what happened with Greg Look. I don't think it's all his. Now, I do think his scenes are his fault, but I don't think that everything that got done was his fault.
Well, here's maybe something to keep in mind when you're writing an extended series like Dark Shadows. Not every character you write you're gonna see as a breakout. Some characters are purely functional, like Harry Johnson was a purely functional character. It's just that the actor never really, the actor didn't really bring anything. Craig Slocum never brought anything to it other than a very limp and false performance.
So in other words, he was a flop.
The actor was a flop. The character served a purpose. Not all characters. So like Buffy Harrington is one of those where the actress does a really good job, but the character is also a very functional character. She's not meant to be a breakout character. There's not going to be, if this were the Dark Shadows cinematic universe, there's not going to be a 10-week streaming service about the adventures of Buffy Harrington.
But I mean, Harry Johnson was popping up a lot for a while, especially around Nicholas Blair. And then it was like Harry Johnson was over too soon. Because Harry Johnson was down and we didn't see him back up again.
Because Greg Slocum, I hate to say this, he doesn't make the most of his opportunities. Where the girl who plays Buffy Harrington does. And I know somebody might say, well, she gets more time. I don't know if she does or doesn't. Just when she's on screen, she takes advantage of being on screen. She does a good job.
Do you think that there are certain possibilities story-wise that she provides that maybe Craig's character didn't?
Yes, and here's the thing too. She's a character who can be manipulated, but she's not. It doesn't make her stupid. It just means she's very susceptible to love and romance. Now, who's she attracted to? She's attracted to the bad boy of Cyrus Longworth. And with Greg Slocum, with Harry Johnson, here's one for you. Instead of introducing Harry Johnson just as Mrs. Johnson's, son or whatever, okay, what if you see these two hands picking a lock? You don't know what the lock is to. It's picking a lock, and the lock is to Nicholas Blair's house, and that's how we meet Harry Johnson.
Okay.
Tell me it's not just, it's about character introduction to. For example, okay, Kathy Cody. How did we meet her?
Who are you?
Right. Okay.
Who are you?
It's about that too. It's we appreciate her 1841 Carrie Stokes more because it's much more mature. She's not screaming. She's getting more screen time. She's a lot more confident in herself. With Greg Slocum's Harry Johnson, the character he played in 1795 was a better character because he was a scumbag. Okay, well now you bring a character who's a thief into the present day, and it's Mrs. Johnson's son. Well, instead of just, I'm not saying you couldn't have eventually introduced him as Mrs. Johnson's son. Maybe instead of going directly to the house, he figures, you know what, I'm going to break into this house over here. And it happens to be the home of Nicholas Blair, and Nicholas catches him in the act. And that's why he ends up working for Nicholas. Patrick, you there? No.
Hey, Patrick.
this call. This is going to end this call if I answer this. So let me see if I can just invite him back.
Yeah, I thought he was just taking a pause and just being silent just for humorous effect, but no.
Okay, let me see if I can invite him back into this one instead of just ending the call, because we do that.
and for those of you watching our next episode, it's the musical episode. And you know who's going to be doing all the singing? Patrick. Don't tell him. Let's wait till the end of this episode to let him know.
Like, oh, by the way,
Our
Patrick.
secret.
Yeah, by the way. Oh my god. Oh my god. Internet connections. Oh my god. What are your thoughts on Greg Slocum, Gordon? While I'm trying.
I think Harry Johnson was a character who I think the writers had some ideas to do with, but once they started really digging into the other storylines, it's like, what do we do with this guy? Because it's like, you already have a Willie. They're probably thinking, okay, what do we do with Mrs. Johnson? Because do we really need a maid there and all that? Like, I'm not criticizing it, but I think Craig Slocum suffered from, again, too much teleprompter reading. Oh, Patrick's back.
It's my front, actually, but yes.
But do you think that his character introduction was bad, Greg Slocum's Harry Johnson?
I don't think it was bad. I think it was just that weird confluence of, I think the writers were trying to figure out how do we integrate him, and I don't think his performance, when you look at any of the other major roles, you just talked about Kathy Cody.
Yeah.
She grew into the role, but it was, I think the writers were looking at her and going, oh, she's actually delivering some stuff. Let's write for that. Yeah. Versus let's just give her a script and hope she stumbles through it. I think there was at least some essence that it's the same. I think it's the same with Fred, the same with David Selby, the same with Laura Parker. They started to see like, oh, maybe it was just being on set and talking with them and conferring with them about scripts. They saw that, oh, they're bringing something to this. Let's write to that. I don't know if they ever had a chance to do it with Craig Slocum. It may have been that they looked at him and go, oh, we'll just give him functional dialogue. I mean, at least with Buffy Harrington, they at least saw the actors go, okay, she can deliver. They're may not be seeing her as like one of their stars, but they're seeing someone who's competent, and that's sometimes the harder role to fill, is someone who can get the role out and get it done, and be able to do it without looking at the teleprompter or without flubbing their lines.
Patrick, what do you think?
I think that Harry Johnson was a surprise. Harry Johnson was not something I was expecting. Harry Johnson never really sat right with me. And honestly, Craig Slocum just doesn't fill up the screen. I mean, when Harry Johnson is there, I almost feel like I'm squinting to really see him as a part of what's going on. I think Elizabeth Ice is a lot more successful than Harry Johnson at giving the show a new direction, which is what I think it needs.
Have you guys ever seen the Red Rooster in WWF?
Constantly. He lives across the street from me.
Yeah, the Red Rooster and I go out for beers every Saturday.
Played by wrestler Terry Taylor. Yeah, I do agree with you both. I just think that sometimes you're going to get actors who don't look. Not every actor is going to be your big star. I get that, but I do think that it does. Harry Johnson serve a purpose? There's a means to an end, but I think he could have been more of a means to an end, other than, oh, this is Mrs. Johnson's son. Okay, okay, that's Mrs. We heard Mrs. Johnson say she didn't really want to talk about her family at one point in time, and when you see Harry Johnson, you sort of get why.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Harry Johnson does spread some interesting issues in the show, and I think that's worthwhile. He's got spunk. I'll give him that. Harry Johnson has spunk. And that's kind of refreshing, but ultimately it's too much.
In this episode, we still have Jonathan Frid locked in a coffin. Cyrus Longworth is going to unchain that coffin by the end of this episode. Very, very, very creepy. I really enjoy Christopher Pennock as Cyrus, both Cyrus Longworth and John Yeager. What did you guys think of his portrayal in 1970 of both these characters? Gordan?
Well, I think he does a really interesting variation on Jekyll and Hyde, because usually it's usually portrayed as one is, Jekyll is usually like the more civilized and the more, upfront, doesn't worry about propriety, and Hyde is like brutish and thuggish and everything else. I think what Pennock does is he kind of looks at basically Longworth and Yeager as having similar traits, except with Longworth, he's the polite. He's all about his formula is going to get the good out of people. And with Yeager, it's not so much he's evil, is I think those inhibitions. I think Longworth has a lot more inhibitions that than Yeager just kind of throws out. Yeager's like, the fact that he stabs a dude while he's lying on the ground with his sword cane. He basically, someone who he has, brutalizes Buffy into, you're going to get me this formula. And he tries to sway Sabrina with and she catches him on the dear versus darling or whatever. I think Pennock does a really good job in making both of these really, it's like you can believe these are both two entirely different characters, but yet they're two characters in the same person.
I see, when I watched John Yeager in this episode, I saw a bit of Negan, like from The Walking Dead. Like a bit.
I'm vaguely familiar with the character, but I don't think I think he's a lot more calculating and maybe a little less brutal. Yeah, and of course, you know what that green liquid in his safe was? It was he invented it was his invention. It was Jägermeister. You take a shot of that, you're going to turn into John Yeager.
Well, that's true.
What did you think of the character, Patrick? The character
of this little rascal here,
of Yeager and Cyrus Longworth.
I think they are two of the smartest, most interesting characters on the show. I think that this does a really interesting job. Head does weird stuff there. It does a really interesting job with taking what is kind of a curious, very Victorian novel, not in the best ways, and it continues what Richard Matheson started on Star Trek with The Animal Within. And in that episode, Kirk is split by the transporter into two beings, an American and a Canadian. And the Canadian is very peaceful, but of course, maybe a little too peaceful. The American is just insanely warlike, but can make decisions. And so it's not Canadian American; it's good and evil. But they put, well, the Canadian's the good one. And so he realizes that he has to have both sides. It's not this thing of, I shall take a formula that will turn me into pure goodness, and then, it turns him into pure evil, and it's just running around raping things and just being a horrible little homunculus. Enemy Within talked about why this is a vital part of ourselves. I think it has a post-Freud understanding of, certain elements of psychology, and then the cats that followed Freud, including Gilligan. I love Gilligan. You a Gilligan fan?
Yep, Carol Gilligan.
Exactly.
Great thinker.
Gilligan spells Gilligan. So I really like that. I was just listening to a brilliant essay about John Yeager just yesterday, written by me. And because I was listening to some of Mary's audiobook stuff. And what came up there is that John Yeager does not deal with opposition very well. If there is a day where everything's going to go in John Yeager's way, Yeager may actually be a terrific guy. You could, because Yeager has a lot of joy. When we first see Frederick March as Mr. Hyde, he is this almost impish, little boyish simian. And then later, is where he becomes really monstrous and horrible and so on. Pinnock is a smart guy, and he keeps Yeager somewhat little boyish and capable of fun. When I wrote to Chris about this before he died, he said that his intention with the part was to explore the absolute joy of pure evil. And by pure evil, I think we simply mean a life with no petty obstructions in your way. Philosophically, the way I look at it, when I do contemplate basically a lawful evil alignment in the universe, I think about this. We're all going to die. And so because we're all going to die, having excessive goody-goodiness is just going to make the trip that much more miserable. Now, I don't personally think this is a tenable moral stance, but I do think it's what's going through Yeager's mind. And so that's the thing. Anyway, that's some of my rambling about John Yeager. I got a lot I can say. I think the biggest issue is not that John Yeager is too different than we are. It's that we don't live up to the Yeager standard.
I think with Yeager, when he sees a threat, he eliminates it. If look at this episode, he eliminates a threat. Somebody who is going to blackmail him, and so he's not going to stand for that. So he kills the guy. And then somebody sees this, and he goes in to hide, and then the guy sees him. He comes out, he runs at the dude, then he runs past him and keeps running, and the guy follows him, and he follows him back to Cyrus Longworth's place, and lo and behold, this is what causes a lot of the events too afterwards, where the guy comes in and you see Cyrus Longworth's lovely assistant, and she's like, no, Cyrus isn't here, like, and she's telling the truth, Cyrus isn't there. And so I love how in this episode you have a very, very good moment of John Yeager calling his assistant over the phone, as he's John Yeager, but he's using Cyrus's voice. and it really shows. Pennock always showed his range, and he really shows this range in this episode too. He has that moment there, and I think with the term evil, I mean, it reminds me of Barnabas a bit. I mean, if somebody had something on Barnabas, or he thought somebody had something, he was going to get rid of them. I think with the word evil, there's so many different layers of evil.
Yeah.
When I think of like pure evil, like to me, the purest form of evil I saw was Michael Myers as a killer. But with this, yeah, he's a killer. He'll kill somebody to kill somebody if he has to. I mean, but at the same sense, I mean, because Buffy Harrington, by God, her story doesn't end well.
Yeah. Jaeger to me is less about being evil and more about when we meet Cyrus Longworth, he's a very restrained character. He's very shy, very tentative, very quiet. I don't think Jaeger is Cyrus Longworth with the good stuff taken out. I think John Jaeger is what happens when Cyrus Longworth's inhibitions are let go, are released. You know what I mean? It's not the Michael Myers, hey, I'm going to go stab you. Right. It's the, okay, if I got to get through you to get what I want, I'm going to do it. Because Jaeger is capable of, the fact that he could talk to his assistant in a even though it's Cyrus's voice, there's nothing counterfeit about the tone. I mean, the only thing that is counterfeit is like the whole dear versus darling. And it would be like, I mean, that's, if a woman I were with had made that difference, I'd say, does it really matter what I call you? As long as I call you and you know who you are. Okay.
Johnson.
Well, too, with what you were saying, I like what you're saying. You also have the fact that with Cyrus Longworth. Well, here's my question: Do you guys feel Cyrus Longworth's? I know he needs the serum to turn into Jaeger, and eventually he doesn't. But do you think that the decision to really do this stems from the night Angelique died?
The decisions to do what stemmed from the night Angelique died?
The decision to make this formula.
Oh, you're talking about parallel time, Angelique. Yeah. I thought it was like something like in the writer's room.
No.
No, because what would the murder of Angelique have had to do with the price of,
It's who he feels did it. Now, to be clear, I do want to say that Cyrus Longworth, he feels that Quentin murdered his wife, in his opinion.
Yeah.
Now, he's wrong. He doesn't know he's wrong, but he's wrong.
Yeah.
But he does feel, and to be fair, we know how Quentin is in this timeline. He's very violent. So it's easy to see why Cyrus made that assumption of, I believe Quentin murdered his wife. And so he covered up that. He says he basically helped cover up that fact in a sense. So I always get the sense that Cyrus Longworth's evil side sort of started to show either sometime after this seance went wrong. Angelique died.
Is it an evil side, or is it just a side that doesn't need anyone's approval?
Yeah, and I think that's I think where it's the really fine distinction that the show makes. Because most adaptations of Jekyll and Hyde either do the good versus evil split or the civilized versus primitive split. I think Dark Shadows is saying Cyrus is the person who has restrictions and a certain sense of morality and certain internal things that keep him back. And Jaeger, those kind of checks are taken away. So both men are, say, very ambitious. The only difference is Cyrus is kind of like the, oh gosh, he's going to pursue them slowly, whereas Jaeger's like, you know what, I see that, you're in the way, I'm going to kill you. And that's it's a very fine line to draw, both in performance and in writing. Because Jaeger is not the, Jaeger is not portrayed as, say, necessarily a bestial man or an ugly man, or he's portrayed as basically a guy who's kind of maybe a shade or two away from being a criminal.
Okay.
You know what I mean? He's not. I don't see him as evil. I just see him as a guy who doesn't have a lot of mental restrictions. I'm not condoning his behavior, but I think it's more of a, for all we know, that green liquid is Jägermeister, and this is just Cyrus Longworth going on a bender.
What would be a situation where you would actually want John Jaeger as your agent on Dark Shadows?
If someone were messing with me and I know that it would impact him because I wouldn't want him to get back at me, it's like, hey, this person's going to screw over both of us, John. You go get him.
Does John Jaeger have a moral compass? Does he have a sense of right and wrong to him?
Yes. I think he has his own personal moral compass, yes.
Where do you think he would have stood on the issue of Jason McGuire and Liz and Carolyn?
I think he would have probably killed Jason McGuire and tried to marry Elizabeth himself.
Yeah, I agree. I think at the very least, Jason would not have been a problem for very long. In fact, would Willie, if he had run into John Jaeger at the Blue Whale instead of Burke Devlin, would we even have gotten a Barnabas?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think keep in mind Jaeger's Devlin's fight and Loomis's fight is in public. So I think if there's a fight between Jaeger and Loomis, fisticuffs, I think Jaeger's win. But if something has to happen where Jaeger, and something probably would have later outside the Blue Whale, Jaeger does his business in private where no one sees it. When he goes to murder somebody, it's very private. He's not going to do it in public.
Okay. I thought he didn't use stall, like he only used stalls or things like that. Avoid the urinals.
Yeah, I see Jaeger is more of a I think a lot more willing, like with Willie, to use kind of brute force and intimidation, because Willie, you get the sense that Willie, he's the second to, he's basically McGuire's kind of errand boy. Then it becomes Barnabas's errand boy. There's no real sense of a strong sense of personality. I could see if you have John Jaeger in early Barnabas era Dark Shadows, he takes out McGuire, marries Liz. He makes sure that Willie knows, hey, he's the man in charge. He probably would have found the mausoleum. And I think that Barnabas, because he's in that, he's free and everything else. I think Jaeger would have figured out a way to go, okay, I'm keeping the guy back in that coffin. I'm going to take him out when I need him.
Oh, well, he would have wanted the Barnabas's resources.
Right. So it would be like, okay, yeah, give me your money, but you're going back in the coffin.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of Cyrus Longworth's lovely assistant in this episode?
Well, Lisa Richards I love Lisa Richards. She's marvelous. Yeah, what's not to love?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Joel, why do you hate her so much?
Yeah, Joel. Yeah, this disturbs me. Patrick and I have been talking offline for a while now, and what's with the Lisa Richards hate? Like, what did she ever do? Did she beat you up for your lunch money in grammar school? Did she do that?
The things you have said about that poor woman, Joel.
Yeah, and we can't repeat them because YouTube will take this video off.
Yes, of course. So why you would ask such a question about, well, what do you two like about Lisa Richards? You're her best, as a quote, you've just said this. It's, you're her best friend. So when you say something nice, I'm going to pelt her with rocks and garbage. Now, Lisa Richards is wonderful. And she survived a movie with one of the most pretentious, insufferable filmmakers ever, a guy named Henry Jaglom, who she stars in the most famous movie, Eating. Yeah, Warren's freaking out. That Henry Jaglom. Orson Welles' best friend. But Lisa Richards is in a movie about women and their relationship with food called Eating. And I got to interview Lisa under very weird circumstances.
She does a really good job trying to figure out where Cyrus is when Yeager's not around. And she slowly is putting two and two together. And I love how she's doing it. And I love how the writers show how she's doing it. Really good job all around.
I agree. Gordan, your Lisa Richards take.
I think she does a really good job. I think she's good at playing a role like this. It would be easy to play as kind of like making them dumb and playing up the victimization of it, and she doesn't do that. She's also good at, you see the wheel, you see the gears turning, and you see her approaching the conclusion and starting to put things together, which is sometimes not easy to do for an actor.
I'm curious about something. I have a.
You're not my type, Patrick.
No. We established that very embarrassingly. I still can't get the smell out of the drapes. She reminds me. She reminds me kind of. She would have been a good Betty Brant.
Mm-hmm.
She is a quintessential Gal Friday.
Yes.
What's you guys' favorite scene from this episode?
Well, I think the suspense of what's going to happen when Yeager gets into this, when Yeager and Barnabas really, when they finally come into their confrontation, like proper, like big time. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say when he discovers the chained coffin, because that's where you're not only looking at a showdown with Barnabas, but you're also immediately a showdown with William H. Loomis. And I still say the one thing I'm nitpicking the storyline, but it's okay. William Loomis has written a biography of Barnabas Collins in that time. Presumably, he's done research. He now has an alternate Barnabas Collins who's a vampire. And back in episode 1000, which we all saw, Quentin was like, reading these notes, I'm going to tell the truth about Barnabas Collins. If you're a good writer and you've got a vampire at your thrall, you fictionalize that stuff. You go, okay, you take his experiences, you throw some names around, and you sell that. But no, yeah, I think it's, you could tell that this is a point where, okay, the cast is coming back from shooting House, and they're like, okay, now we're going to set up the inevitable John Yeager, Barnabas Collins showdown.
Yeah, I mean, Anne Rice figured all that while watching this episode.
That's true. What? Okay, so to have because I have not read the Anne Rice books. Has anyone here read them? Read any of them?
Some of them.
Okay.
Here's the thing. Like,
why did the judge make you do that? Anyway, seriously, George. What are the similarities?
When you're reading Interview with the Vampire, you can clearly tell that William H. Loomis is an inspiration for the character Christian Slater is going to go on to play. Okay. And I mean, now, to be clear, Christian Slater doesn't have a wife attached to him, so you got to give me that humor here. That he's interviewing somebody who's a vampire who's willing to talk, who's very sympathetic, because he's been through a lot of shit. Okay? Enter our buddy Barnabas here, who's been through a lot of shit. Who has seen his sister die, his mother die, his father chained him up. He thought his father was going to put a silver bullet in his head. At least that's what he was hoping for. He didn't get that. His wife, the girl he was supposed to marry, he didn't. And, well, she jumped off Widow's Hill because of the wife he did marry and all that other stuff. And you see the similarities that Anne Rice was really a fan of Dark Shadows, and I appreciate her for that. Now, I will say that, because I did read The Wolf Gift, I don't think she copies Quentin Collins' werewolf at all.
The Wolf Gift.
Yeah, that there is a very interesting werewolf story.
Huh. Now, okay, Gordan, what's your take on the Anne Rice Dark Shadows connection?
I think it's. I know she's identified as being a Dark Shadows fan. I think that. Yeah, I don't want to accuse somebody of plagiarism, but I also wonder, because I know when she wrote Interview for the Vampire, she was going through personal grief because I think she had lost her daughter. So I think it kind of ended up in that melange. I always thought that her books were a little overrated, which is why I never really read them. I can't think of two better books by a better author. One's a vampire and one's a werewolf. The author is a gentleman named Robert R. McCammon, who I think is out of South Carolina. And in the late 70s, early 80s, he kind of became known for very gothic writing. But also kind of like he was like a less of an overt Stephen King imitator than someone like Dean Koontz. But he wrote kind of horror. He wrote a really good vampire novel called They Thirst, which is about vampires in 1980s Los Angeles. And he also wrote a great werewolf novel called The Wolf's Hour, which is about a werewolf who is an agent for the Allies in World War II. So if you ever want to read a book about a werewolf attacking and just chewing up Nazis, that's the book to read.
It sounds like Operation Victor.
It is. So
okay.
Yeah. I'm no shade on Big Finish. Well, there's plenty of shade, but that's another podcast.
Not on the works of, oh gosh, who's the guy who wrote? He's a friend of mine. He's the guy who wrote the Tony and Cassandra pieces. God, why can't I think of his name? Hang on. He's good. We cannot let him be besmirched in this.
I'm not besmirching anybody.
Well, I am. But I don't want to besmirch him. Why can't I remember his name? He's such a mensch. Have you heard any of the Tony and Cassandra stuff?
I have heard those. Those are enjoyable.
They are good. So normally his name just rolls right off my tongue. Right now, no. Sorry.
So should I listen to the Big Finish stuff?
Oh boy. Oh boy. That's I'm not answering that. Sure. Okay.
Let me.
Gordan, you go. I got some thoughts.
Okay. Are you talking about Philip Meeks?
No. He wrote just write Tony Cassandra Big Finish.
Okay.
Because he's great. He's a marvelous writer. I compliment him on everything.
Well, Joel, let me preface this by saying one thing. And this was actually on another Dark Shadows podcast. I'm not going to name names, but they had one of the original actors from the show on, and they were asked about Big Finish. And the actor in question said, well, at first they were kind of fun, but eventually you could tell that the writing went down and it just became another paycheck. And I think with Big Finish, it's a mixed bag because there are some that are really good. There's one, I think it's called Beyond the Grave, which is really good. The Tony and Cassandra mysteries are really good. There's the first 4 in the range, and then Kingdom of the Dead. That whole piece is good. There's one but there are a couple that I kind of listened to that were kind of like, not really. They didn't quite get the vibe. There's one that Jonathan Frid actually performed called The Nightwalkers, and it's a hard listen because it's great that they had him do it. However, you can tell that he's not well. His voice is very roomy. It's very like he's having a hard time.
It doesn't sound like Barnabas, even an old Barnabas.
Mm-hmm.
The accent's gone. It's very flat Canadian accent.
And I think the other thing too is that in America, Dark Shadows, you have that kind of intergenerational kind of knowledge that you can pass down from one generation to the next. Big Finish is good at Doctor Who because it's an institution in England. Dark Shadows wasn't popular in England. I don't think it was even shown until the 90s. So there isn't that kind of weight to it.
Yeah. You guys asked a question earlier. Written by David Llewellyn and Mark Thomas Passmore.
Okay, yeah, that's the name I kept trying to get us to. Mark Passmore.
Yeah.
He's the guy. Anything written by Mark Passmore is terrific. Jewel, as a student of Dark Shadowsology, watch listen to the Big Finish stuff.
Yeah. Okay, I will. That's the thing. Like, I want to listen to it, so I'll try to give it a listen too. So, I do think that's the thing when you're casting somebody, you have to understand, like, when you're casting an older Jonathan Frid, there's going to be limitations. I mean, I'm sure they knew that.
Yeah, but you also have to consider that he does not sound well. I mean, this isn't a case of, he just doesn't sound like Barnabas. He is having trouble breathing. It's very, it's like when you listen to it, you go, okay, and I hate saying this because it makes me sound it does not make me sound like the kindest man, but you can tell he was not, you can tell that, this was close to the end. I mean, I don't think they had him do it while dying, but it's just like, he's not going to be on this world any longer.
I would agree. Because he was having trouble breathing and getting around, I think they probably limited the character's blocking.
Mm-hmm.
So the character of Barnabas is moving less from place to place in the audio series than he would normally be, because you don't want to see that.
If they could cast Barnabas in an audio drama today, who would you cast?
In an audio drama?
Audio drama.
Well, if I were going to cast Barnabas in an audio drama now, I would cast Roger Rees.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think he passed on a few years ago.
Is Roger dead? Well, damn. Well, then, I meant to say, I would cast, it's David Hyde Pierce.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would probably, and I'm only going off of the Jonathan Frid documentary. I might try Ian Buchanan because he's also done some voiceover work, so I think he could capture the not just the tone. Maybe he wouldn't be doing an impersonation, but I think he could get the inflection and the unusual cadence of Frid's speech.
I think that's possible.
And if he wasn't dead, I'd say Pee Wee Herman is a second choice.
Paul Rubin's a great actor.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, so now if you were to have to do a live action version, who would you cast? It's a favorite topic, but who would it be?
I'm going to cheat. I would probably want to see if I could cast a newcomer, because it's kind of like when you look at, say, Star Trek and the various actors who've played Kirk. You've got Shatner, you've got Chris Pine in the movies, you've got Paul Wesley on Strange New Worlds. All of them have a different vibe and cadence to them. And I think with Barnabas, you don't want someone coming in and saying, I'm going to be Fred, or I'm going to be Ben Cross, or I'm even going to be Alec Newman. Now, I'd probably want to get someone who was, in their 40s. If I could get someone who had that look, that kind of Napoleonic, like 18th century look that Frid had, all the better. Mm-hmm. I think trying to cast a modern actor in one, I think it would be, no matter how seriously I took it, I think it would be seen as stunt casting. Whereas if you find an unknown or someone who is a good character actor, that I think would be a much more solid and much more viable approach to casting Barnabas.
I have a strong thought on this because it occurred to me the other day, and I grant all of your points, Gordon. If I had to cast an actor who is not an unknown, I would want someone who could be credibly intimidating in the portrait, and when they're really going after Willie or threatening Maggie or something like that, yeah, you have to believe this is a potentially dangerous person. However, I think by going too Rico Suave with everything, you miss out on the tremendous potential humor of the character. And that's not a thing I want to go without. So I had a flash the other day, but I didn't have my glasses on, so I don't know what I saw. But really, no, I had a flash the other day. Bill Hader.
He could work.
He's funny. He could get the neurosis, but he can also be a very serious actor with marvelous cheekbones and penetrating eyes. But he's not kind of a classic pretty boy either. It's a groovy combination, as Austin Powers would say.
Yeah. Good choices.
Jewel, what about you?
Robin Lord Taylor.
That's what I thought you would say. Who is that?
I just sent a picture on the chat. Hope you check it out.
Oh my God!
He played the Penguin in Gotham.
Oh, okay. So you said Burgess Meredith?
No.
They say wah. Oh, Joel, what is it with you? These guys with these sort of very prominent proboscis. Is like Adam Driver. And
is that your fetish, Jewel?
Well, now we've done it again.
But
gotta be nuts.
But my fetish is working at Sheets right now. She'll be home in the morning. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
Your fetish is working your sheets?
I thought he said his fetish was working his cheese, I figured it's a Pennsylvania thing.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
I can't keep up, Jewel. You and your women and just your life of sin and iniquity is sheer carnality with you all the time.
Well, you missed that when you were out for a while, Jewel made an executive decision.
Uh-huh.
Our next episode is a musical episode, and you're doing all the singing.
I have a lubricious voice. I'm wearing pants. They're made of lycra, and they cling to me in oh so many ways. They're just pants, you see, but pants for me to wear for all my days. When I think of all the leather lederhosen that people wear in far off Germany, I guess they chafe, but I think they are supposing that we all see that they are firm of knee. I'm wearing pants, they're made of lycra, and they cling to me in oh so many ways. They're just pants, you see, but pants for me to wear for all my days, to wear for all my days. That's, of course, Joanna with the actual lyrics.
I was gonna have you send some Sabaton. Anyway,
I'll do Radar Love later, if that helps.
oh my god, is there anything you guys want to add about episode 1010?
Yeah, okay. If you're throwing Tintin at us, where's Captain Haddock? Where's Snowy? That's what. Where's calculus? You know, that's what I want to know.
And what I like to know about episode 1010 is why Larry? Just why Larry?
Why Larry? I'm wearing pants. They're filled with Larry.
Oh my god!
And Larry rhymes with Harry.
Who's you guys' favorite Dark Shadows writer for the 6th?
Oh,
Before we go,
I can answer it. I'm sure Gordon can too. That's not like me saying, well, Gordon can, but I mean, I have an answer like loaded and ready to go.
that's. You know, I can't decide whether it's Sam Hall or Gordon Russell.
Okay.
I know that's the obvious answer, but
Okay, let me ask you this. Sam versus Gordon, together again for the very first time. What elements that are distinctly Gordonic would lead you to nominate Gordon potentially for that position?
I think there's a certain amount of wit and there's a certain amount of sparkle in his writing, where Sam, at least his style to me, is a little bit more straightforward. I think there's a willingness to. I think they both kind of encompass what Dark Shadows is, because it's not quite a straightforward supernatural, but it's not quite this kind of soap opera-y. I think between the two, there's a great balance, and they kind of contrast each other. Of course, I could say Malcolm Marmorstein because he wrote Night Gallery in 1972, but that's kind of reaching. That's a Jewel thing to say.
In a good way, Jewel. In a good way. That is a flag I think you would carry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually going to pick Ron Sprout. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that to be a trolling asshole. But anyway,
no, that actually makes sense because Sprout.
I'm sorry. What about Ron?
I really like his writing. Really good job, and contrary to popular belief by Danny Horn, he is a good writer.
Danny Horn is a good writer.
No. Ron Sprout's a good writer.
Well, of course, Ron Sprout's a good writer. Who would challenge Ron Sprout as a?
Yeah, who's Danny Horn and where does he live? Because I'm not going to have any Ron Sprout slander on this podcast. No, Ron. No, I think it's hard. Yeah, I think it's hard with selecting writer. Who's your favorite writer? Because for me, it's about what I see the story in total. I don't think there's any bad, I don't think there's any really bad writers of Dark Shadows. Okay, maybe the Marty Feldman episode, but that was a quirk.
I think that was their finest hour. Yeah, I have to. I have to. It's a choice so obvious that many times I think people are hesitant to make it. But I'm gonna go over and just say Sam Hall. And Gordan, it's interesting. You mentioned the whole thing about Gordon Russell having a little more sparkle. That is something that Christopher Pennock said when I got to interview him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to watch for those moments, right? And you know what I found? The biggest laughs were Sam Hall. That Sam was also really good at crafting genuine, like just tremendously catty zingers. And I think Sam's underrated in that department. That's just
well, I think it's more you could see the two men kind of starting to influence each other a little bit, especially since for a long time they were like the only two, like the two, like essentially they'd be the script editors if this were a British production.
Yes. Yeah.
I really like how the fact that Christopher Pennock's character ends up beneath the old house in the basement. Really good. Guys, is there anything you want to add about episode 1010 before we go?
It's a cool episode. I'm glad you decided to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually Gordon's turn to pick an episode. When are you available, good sir?
Let's see. I'm available Sunday. And let's see, episode. What episode should I choose? So many.
701.
I'll do 793. 701. Nice try, Patrick. Nice try.
It is important.
So Sunday night is 11 p.m. good, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sunday night, it's going to be that episode. Guys, first of all, thank you so much for always joining me.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm listing the writers, the writer, the narrator, and the director is something I started last night. That continues tonight. Links to Gordan Dymowski's Amazon page is going to be in the description box. Links to where you get the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound. The physical edition, baby, is going to be in the description box.
Out there.
Go pick it up if you don't have it already. Guys, you got to have a good and safe night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.